once you get to that level, when you actually can touch on the infinite, then you realize, yes, this is something that can satisfy my cravings. And we humans are such a species that we crave for infinite. We can never be satisfied with anything but infinite source.
We need a place to hide, a safe place somewhere in the woods we can start a fire. And we all sit around the fire. We feel a little warmer now. And we all sit around the fire.
How have you been? How's life been? You were trucking around, and now you're back at the Jagrati and living with monks, and now you potentially want to become a monk. So
Yep, that's the goal. Well, I could say that it's kind of a cliche, but I'm sort of living my best life right now. Just staying within this very strict schedule, waking up at 4:45 a.m., just going straight into kirtan, doing meditation, doing yoga. You know how it was here. Pretty much the same schedule, like we did together. 3 times, 4 times meditation per day, 4 hours of meditation, 2 hours of yoga per day. Doing some karma yoga also, helping Dada, my monk who I stay with his office work, with some construction around here, around our ashram, and eating good food, vegetarian food that I cook. I learned to cook here
I
pretty
I,
much.
I remember
And
there was a lady across the street. Do you still ever help her with her leaves and stuff? I used to do that. I did that a few times. Have you never done that?
no, I think our neighbors changed.
Okay.
But pretty much everybody. You remember Todd, the handyman?
Vaguely, yeah.
Another day, he told me that I never looked this happy. And I told him, of course, why would I be sad?
Yeah. You
Since
have
I made this decision that I want to go and become a monk, I kind of accepted internally that yeah, I want to live this life, and I know that I like this life, and that it gives me purpose. Because, well, this time when I'm staying here, it's very different because I'm actually getting ready to go for training center. So we did a little plan with Dada on how I should approach it. So I'm learning Sanskrit sutras. I'm studying all the philosophy very, very sincerely. I'm learning how to play kirtan. I'm learning Prakat Samgits. I'm taking 200-hour yoga teacher course. And, it's been very inspiring, especially the sutra thing. In Ananda Marga, we have 86 or 85 or 86 Sanskrit sutras. That's basically a foundation of our philosophy.
I think it's
And
84. Is that the you mean the
it's
what
a
is it called?
it,
The
Ananda Sutram.
Ananda Sutra. It's 84, I think, right? Or maybe it's 86.
It's around that,
Yeah, it's
more or
80
less.
something, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 80 something. And it's been super inspiring, and my goal is to be actually able to use it in conversation.
Mm.
For example, imagine you become a monk and somebody comes up to you with a certain question, and you don't want to be just that YouTube guy who just talks simply, and gives simple answers, or you just trust the universe, or, oh, everything is consciousness. You kind of want to be more specific, right?
Mm.
And that's what the sutras are for, pretty much. It's like you're going to doctor, and the doctor can just tell you, oh, you just need to get some sun and fresh air, and just eat good. You wouldn't trust that doctor, right? But if you go to a professional, he gives you professional terms, he gives you a specific type of medicine that you need to take, and so on and so on. And I feel the same way with the sutras. Do you remember Sanjay?
Yes, of course.
Well, I can give you an example of what I'm talking about. We've been having some internet issues here. And every day at 8 p.m. they would try to fix it, do certain things to tweak it, to reset the router and so on. And last night they actually fixed it finally. And I was just making my cup of tea before I go to bed. And I was going down from the kitchen and I met Sanjay and he looked so happy. So I asked him, hey, did you guys fix the internet? He said, yes. And then I told him, and then I asked him, are you happy now? And he looked at me like very confused. And he said, yeah, we fixed the, oh. He looked at me very confused and he said, yeah, I'm happy. And then I give him this sutra that goes Anukula Vidaniyam Sukham, which basically, if you translate it to English, means that happiness is when the mental waves of your mind meets the object of the external world that has the same type of energy, or the same type of mental waves. And when the same kind of waves meet, then you become happy.
Actually, I remember. I think the term that Baba used was like congenial.
Yeah, congenial mental.
So I don't know how I remembered that, but yeah, I remember that.
Oh, that's actually very impressive because I did not remember that.
I think that was just a random luck of
Yeah.
the.
And then I tell him, do you remember another sutra? Sukham Anantam Anandam.
Yes. Oh, I don't even know. I don't know if I can think of what that means though. Sukhan, that's like sukha is like happiness probably. Anandam is
and
bliss.
Ananda is bliss. So the only happiness that could be permanent is bliss. And the bliss we can only gain from God, not from the external objects. And basically when we had this conversation, it felt very good, to be able to use this philosophy in real life and see how it actually works in real world. Not just in a book, not just in some scripture, but actually see how it works and see, the actual realization of that.
There's a.
So that's very inspiring.
There's a. I think some quote by somebody, and maybe it's some saint or some teacher, that all the knowledge and all of the wisdom we can use as like power behind for our arguments and for our discussions and for our to try to bring people to the path. Like it's gives a lot of, without that kind of intellectual rigor, like we can say a whole lot of stuff or feel a whole lot of stuff, but if we want to really bring people onto that path in those conversations and discords, it's that intellectual, very, very deep intellectual understandings and very, very if somebody comes at you with all this powerful language, you're like, whoa, like, okay, he knows what he's talking about,
Yeah.
So
yeah, and of course that gives me this temporary happiness. But when you live this life and you are in this every day, you understand that this life worth living.
So for the average person, I think that they would just find it absolutely crazy, the idea of becoming a monk. So how would you explain that decision to somebody who perhaps is completely in another world, who for them, being in the porn industry would be heaven and being a monk would be hell, for some people that would be like, but for you it's like, or for most people, but for a spiritual person or it's like flips, like that other world would be hell and this would be heaven. So how would you explain that to, somebody who's, because I remember I saw some video of porn stars versus nofap people, or people who are into brahmacharya. And I remember hearing this lady discussing how being a monk or becoming a Christian would be like hell for her. So how would you explain that to somebody who's, doesn't understand?
Well, I could only speak on this from my personal perspective. In the philosophy, it's believed that Basically, our whole world is Lila, just the cosmic play. So maybe some of these souls kind of need to experience that and need to go through that first. And I could be lying if I said that I never experienced that, or maybe in my past lives I never went through that. It's just in this life I don't get any fulfillment from this at all. And as you know, it took me quite some time to actually make the decision to go for monk training. It actually took me like 3 years to finally make this decision because we are all human, right? And we all have our addictions, we all have our weaknesses, and we all have our enemies of the mind that we need to struggle against. And for example, past year when I was thinking about it, I was just actually scared to leave the US. Because if I leave the US, I cannot come back here. And I thought, okay, if I don't like the training center, I will not be able to come back. So I would pretty much just ruin my life. But now I don't.
Oh, I think your audio just cut out. I don't know if that's on my end or. Oh, I hear you again.
You hear me?
Yeah. Sorry. Just cut out for a second.
Okay, I think I.
Oh, it cut out for a small second again. I don't know if it's the internet or what.
Oh, I think it's good. It might be the internet. It might be the internet. Is it good now?
Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean? But pretty much when I'm reflecting on this decision, it's kind of coming together like a puzzle, from so many different spheres of life. I can tell you the full story. As you mentioned before, I was working as a truck driver, right? And I actually enjoyed this profession for first couple of years. But then I started to feel really stagnant mentally and physically doing this job. Even if you listen to a lot of audiobooks, even if you try to exercise, even if you're trying to get your sleep, you still struggle physically and mentally. Just listening to audiobooks is not enough to stimulate the brain. And I thought to myself, okay, what can I do? I can either buy my own truck and start my own company to kind of keep growing in the industry, or I can just go for a completely different profession. Well, buying my own truck was never an option for me because I appreciate kind of my freedom and I don't want to be stuck in this kind of metal box. And it also related to breaking the law in many cases. And I couldn't do my meditation properly and so on and
What do
so
you mean
forth, and
breaking the law? What do you mean by breaking the law? Like you would.
well, it's not really a secret that in trucking industry is very hard and very competitive. And in order to actually survive as a small company, very often you have to drive more than it's legally allowed.
Okay.
So say it's legally allowed to drive 11 hours, but there is so many other companies that drive more than that that you just cannot compete with them. So you also have to drive more than that. Of course, the big companies don't usually do that because they have good fuel discounts, they have their own loads and stuff like that. But if you only have one or two trucks, very often you have to break the law. And I personally didn't want to do that. It's pretty hard to drive 11 hours per day, but if you have to drive 14, 15 hours per day, that's just crazy. And I would never make somebody else do that because obviously it puts other people at risk, right? And people overdose on caffeine, people even use other drugs to stay awake on the road. So that wasn't an option. And then I thought, okay, if I move on from truck driving, what else would I want to do with my life? And I was kind of thinking about going and studying for psychologist, and I can explain why. Basically, I think our civilization right now is on the edge of real big change. First, because of the AI. People losing jobs to AI and automation. And especially in the Western world, the only meaning of life that people have is their job. It's very obvious here in the US, especially, that people just work until they die because they really don't have any other meaning of life at all. So imagine if 40, 50, 60, 80, 100% of jobs become automated. People just won't know what to do with their lives. They could just start using drugs or play video games all day. And in spirituality and in spiritual development, I see a whole other wider field. Spirituality is something that gave me a new meaning of life. It gave me a new outlook on life, a new perspective on life. It gave me, it grew new hobbies in me, like YouTube, editing, filming, playing guitar, drawing, I even came up with some poetry at some point in my life, in my spiritual journey. So it gives you a lot new, more inspiring things to do. And another thing is this like endless wars. People coming back home from the front, whether it's Ukraine or it's Gaza or it's Iran or whatever, people coming back home with PTSD. And of course, they need mental help, they need treatment. And I think, psychologists could do that, but also monks can do that. They can teach people meditations, they can teach people philosophy, they can teach people yogas, they can bring a lot of meaning into their lives. So what I realized is, even if I studied all of the great psychologists like Jung or Freud or whoever else it might be, and somebody comes to me with their problem, I'm so infused with spirituality that I would still talk about Baba and Krishna and Bhagavad Gita
Right.
and so on, And the other thing is that I never really wanted to have a family ever since I was a boy. And my mom would always tell me, "Oh, you're gonna grow up and you're gonna wanna have kids," but it never happened.
Okay.
And then I met Dada, and I saw his way of life, and I saw his lifestyle of always being on the move, his style of doing a lot of spiritual practice, his lifestyle of helping people and inspiring people, and always traveling, And I really digged it. I thought, that's the best life, There's no better life than the one that he has. And it kind of all came together. Not wanting to have a family, wanting to spread the spirituality, the desire to help people, the desire to meet and learn new cultures, because as a monk, in our tradition, in Ananda Marga, you're supposed to be moved from one country to another every 10 years. And then I thought, why am I even thinking about it? It kind of became an obvious decision for me.
Well, that's awesome.
And talking about the brahmacharya and celibacy, then, I mean, you can never get satisfied with that. Once you start meditating, you realize that you cannot be satisfied with finite objects. You can have sex. You can have sex 2 times per day, 3 times per day. Next day you still want to have sex again. You can never be satisfied with sex. As you cannot be satisfied with food, you cannot be satisfied with money, you cannot be satisfied with finite objects. But once you actually start doing meditation and you start doing spiritual practice, at least even for half an hour per day, most people just start out with 5 minutes per day, 10 minutes per day. But once you get to that level, when you actually can touch on the infinite, then you realize, yes, this is something that can satisfy my cravings. And we humans are such a species that we crave for infinite. We can never be satisfied with anything but infinite source.
That's a clip.
So
It's good. It's a clip right there. Yeah, that was much better than the answers that. No offense to Shiva, my friend, that I'm sure maybe you've seen online or not, but um, I would ask him a question, and they're much shorter. So that was I very much like that answer. Um, okay, so yeah, so the average person, right, doesn't want to, probably would not want to do that, but you found all these congenial, you could say, aspects of this, um, and also you're talking also about how, you know, none of that finite stuff is going to satisfy you, right? It's not going to satisfy you, and so you realize that very intelligently. Um, so I guess my next question is, what was your most spiritual experience that you've ever had? Like, yeah, maybe in meditation or psychedelics, or maybe you have one for each, or maybe anything you want to say.
Well, I've had quite a lot of spiritual experiences, to be honest. I did ayahuasca before I started doing meditation, and ayahuasca was just mind-blowing for me because with ayahuasca you have to set up an intention before the ceremony, and my intention was how to actually evolve in spirituality because before I did my ayahuasca, I just started doing meditation. Maybe it was even the same week or something like that. So I was very inspired. So when I came to the ceremony, I wanted to get an answer to that. I'm not sure if you want me to describe the whole ceremony or.
Uh, it's totally up to you. Doesn't it's
Well, it was in the desert of Arizona, a very kind of secluded place.
I like
We
doing
were in some
spiritual.
sort of
I love doing spiritual stuff in deserts. That's the best place to do it. Sorry, but continue. Go on.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I lived in Phoenix for about 2 years and I absolutely loved it. The desert has some sort of very mystical, entirely different vibes, especially at night when you see the sky full of stars
East of San
and
Diego here,
saguaro cactuses and all of that.
yeah. East of San Diego here, there's
Yeah.
the best stargazing, and so I go out there. It's a spiritual best vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can even go in a couple of weeks because in a couple of weeks I'll be free.
Yeah, yeah. You come down here.
Well, anyway.
I have a bed for you here. So I don't know if I should show the
Oh,
camera.
cool.
Not necessarily for you, but for you. If you want to, you want to stay here, you're welcome.
Cool. Well, I looked up the ayahuasca. I was living in Phoenix, and it was just like 2 hours south of Phoenix. So I came, and they did some ceremonies, like they cleaned our nostrils, they cleaned our eyes, and all of that type of thing. And then they gave me a shot of drink about this size. So I drank it, and I was kind of expecting that I would see things like in the real world around me. And I always wanted to see aliens, so I would just go outside. And I was kind of expecting to see aliens around me. So you could tell I had no idea how ayahuasca worked. And all of a sudden, I really wanted to lay down, you know, really bad. So I went and I lied down on my mat in a tent, and my eyes really became like, they really became heavy. And once my eyes started to close, I kind of started to see this kaleidoscope, just many colors, many different triangles, and all of this geometrical stuff. And since I have already started to do meditation, it was very easy for me to let go and kind of relax and enjoy the process, you know? So I was just laying down there, enjoying the kaleidoscope of the colors and the triangles, and all of a sudden, in some distance, the cat appeared, and it was like big orange fat cat, and it started walking towards me, and came really close, and started just staring at me, in my mind. And I was thinking to myself in Russian, like, what am I supposed to ask this cat questions? And it goes like, just like a light note. And then I'm thinking, the universe speaks Russian, and then the cat goes like this again. You know, and then I kind of ask this question telepathically: how do I progress in spirituality? And it started to show, and it gave me an answer. It gave me three answers actually, in different ways. The first one was it showed me different people who I love, people who I don't love so much, people who I don't know, just some random strangers on the street. And each one of these people had a light here in the Anahata chakra. And the way I interpreted it is in every human there is a piece of God. Each one of us is coming from this infinite source. So no matter who you meet, whether it's your friend or it's your enemy or if it's just a random person on the street, you should treat them nicely, no matter what. You should always see not this ego, not this physical body, but you should also actually see this, light inside of them. And when you remember to do that, you begin to actually love people. I used to not, I used to not to love people so much. I would always look for some sort of minuses in them, things to criticize them for. It's kind of like the second lesson in Ananda Marga, when you take the spiritual ideation before you do an action. You can also apply that to other people when you talk to them. The other lesson that the cat gave me was to actually enjoy the journey and not to after a goal, because when I started to do meditation, I always wanted to have some sort of experience, I always wanted to have some sort of vision or whatever, and it actually gave me an advice that it's a very long process and it's a journey. You have to enjoy the journey when you sit down and meditate, and it actually helps me in my meditation practice every day a lot. If you sit down to meditate with a goal to get a spiritual experiences, you're never going to have a spiritual experience. Actually, every time when I had spiritual experience in meditation, that would be the times when I expected it the less. When I didn't do nice kirtan, when maybe I skipped my asanas. It was just like a grace, It just happens. You shouldn't expect it. You just do the practice, not for yourself, but for the God. And the third lesson, I frankly don't remember. But I think that's two very important takeaways. Of course,
100%.
Since then, I had some past life experiences. I had experience of just merging with the light in meditation. I actually had this thing that Dada was doing just this week. And you remember what I'm talking about? This kind of
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. The kundalini,
And
it's supposed to be like the kundalini rising, like a symptom of that, right?
yeah. And ever since I saw Dada do that, I always wanted to have that. And it was actually this desire to have that experience was something that was stopping me from having it. You know what I mean? Like, you could be doing your meditation, and once you feel that you start to go deep, your human mind gets excited.
Yeah,
And this excitement of the mind is something that breaks your meditation.
100%.
So it just happened naturally. Felt
Definitely a problem for me as well. Even, sorry, were you saying something?
No, you can go ahead.
Yeah, recently we were doing these Vipassana retreats, and I was, maybe not the best to admit this over the internet, but I was doing a lot of Ananda Marga sadhana, I'll be honest, because when you have like, it's just because you get this opportunity, right, for like 10 hours of meditation a day, and it's like
Mhm.
you have such a powerful practice that doing that for such a long amount of time, like it can be very powerful, right? So I also had many experiences in that where I'm like entering into states and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I'm doing it, I'm doing it. And it's like, no, you get too excited and then you lose the focus, because then your focus kind of, it almost can kind of, it becomes so powerful that it encroaches upon your meditation. The bliss just like hits you. So that's why you really have to have that concentration so you can remain in that state, theoretically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably you should also have a lot of this type of experiences when you reach the state when the mind gets excited. So the mind learns not to get excited about it.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But in order to do that, you do have to meditate a lot.
Yeah.
Because if you only meditate 15 minutes per day, 20 minutes per day, it's not gonna cut it.
No, not enough. When I was first starting out, I feel like my meditations were more concentrated. Like when I was many years ago, when I was doing anapanasati, like my very when I first began, I was very concentrated. I only do it for 20 minutes, and that was 20 minutes was enough to kind of get into that flow. But if you really want to go into those deeper, you need to go longer. Yeah, you need to.
You know what I noticed actually with the semen retention is that when you contain your sexual energy, the initial stage of meditation, the pratyahara, the stage of withdrawal of your feelings from the outside world, becomes extremely easy. When you're doing semen retention, I mean, usually when you do your just the first lesson, just regular mantra meditation, you're supposed to spend at least 60-70% on pratyahara. And only then you're supposed to start repeating the mantra. You're supposed to only start repeating the mantra when you already left the body, when you can only see this illusionary space around you, when you don't feel any presence around you, when you don't hear any more noises around you. And that's pretty hard to do. You have to spend a lot of time to withdraw your feelings from the outside world. We just came back from the retreat, and one of the acharyas over there said that you're not ever going to have a samadhi if you are not meditating in complete pratyahara. It's only possible to get a samadhi if you are in complete pratyahara, in complete withdrawal. And semen retention actually makes that possible. If you retain even for just a month, it only makes such a big difference.
Such a big difference.
You sit 10-15 minutes and you're there. It just happens. You have all of this vital force inside of you. But if you're not retaining your energy, if you're not smart with your energy, then your mind will be all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, many people think that meditation is relaxation. And in many cases it is. But if you are actually doing proper meditation, proper like sadhana, sadhana literally means effort. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of mental power to concentrate on many objects at the same time and keep that concentration in place without, breaking it. Of course, thoughts will keep coming in, but you also have to pay attention to that, and you have to move your mind back into the object of your meditation. So it does take a lot of energy. And if you are not saving your energy, you're not going to have that. You just won't have the energy to do it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. So, when did you discover meditation? When did you discover semen retention? You were talking about the psychedelic experience you had. How many years ago was that?
That was about 5 years ago.
And did you discover semen retention around that time, after that, or before that? I'm guessing probably after that,
I
right?
discovered no fab first, but I was not very successful in it because I couldn't motivate myself to do it. And I was like, what, 25 years old? So I was still very kind of excited about women. Now I'm 30 and I'm not as much excited about them anymore. Maybe from my experiences with them. I don't hate women or anything like that. I just, I just don't care about it so much anymore. But I started to do serious semen retention only when I became a Margi. I think only after I already had my 6 lessons. No, actually, I started to be serious about it when we did our LFT training together. That's when it became serious to me.
I was very internal during that time period. I don't know if you what you picked on about me during that time period, but and actually the time I went before that, the first time I was with God, I was extremely introverted, even more than that. Yeah,
Yeah, I did notice it. I mean, it was fine with me.
yeah,
You were not irritating me, and that's usually the most important thing about people I live with,
right, right.
you know.
So, what do you think the longest streak that you've been on semen retention has been? You guess,
Well, I
or do you
don't
not
have
want
to
to talk?
guess because
Uh,
I mean, I have an app for that.
okay,
NoFap app.
okay.
So it kind of does the job for me, but now I got rid of the app because I kind of feel like this is a lifestyle and not something temporary that I just need to count days on. So I just got rid of app whatsoever. But I think the longest streak for me was like half a year, about half a year.
It's nice. It's really good.
And the way I lost the streak is I smoked weed.
Yes, that you can't do that. Definitely not on semen
No,
retention.
no.
It's like I think there's a couple things that if you have this thought in semen retention that you can if you have this thought that you can do it and maintain your streak, then you're fooling yourself. And that's smoking weed, that's peeking at porn, that's entertaining thoughts about girls. It's you're gonna relapse.
Can't do nothing.
Sorry, what'd you say?
I would say even unfollow all of the girls on your Instagram who post,
Yeah.
beach pictures and all of that type of things. You don't want to look at it.
No. Okay. Did you have like any major like understandings about spirituality in the past that as you progressed on the path kind of changed, or did you have some maybe perspective shifts or yeah.
That's actually a very good question. The funny thing with Ananda Marga philosophy is when I started reading Baba's books, it's all clicked so much. Like every word he said was just the way I felt. Everything that he said in his books about the creation of the universe, about social or economical theory, whatever you take from the Anandamurti philosophy, it all made so much sense to me. I felt like I've always thought this way. So, and if I go back to being a child, I remember asking my mom what happens after we die, and my dad would say, you just go dark, nothing happens. You're just a body. And my mom is a Christian. She says, oh, hopefully you go to heaven, or whatever. But as a kid, like 8-year-old, 10-year-old, or even younger, I would argue with them and I would say, no, you actually go for reincarnation, you know, you actually get a new body. And then when I had past life experiences, it gave me a proof of that. So I couldn't say that I knew, I wouldn't say that I learned everything new. I would say that I pretty much just remembered what I already knew before, maybe. But maybe to answer your question more genuinely, I could say that working as an LFT, working as a volunteer in spiritual organization, just maybe taught me more about people. Because, organizations could be built on very nice ideology, and very nice principles. But when you actually get into the organization itself, you see that it's just filled with other people, and people have their flaws, and ideology could be perfect, and the sadhana could work, and the guru could be saint, but the organization that he founded, it could have some flaws. And that's what I have encountered. And that actually is something that gave me a really big clash in my LFT work. Because, I can see our Dada, our Acharya, who does a lot of work in the sector. He takes like 4 or 5 positions, right? He basically works 24/7. But at the same time, I see a lot of other monks. Well, maybe I shouldn't criticize them, but it's not a secret that not many, but some of them don't really do anything.
I think a lot of it is even to do, like, I recall, like, I hope that personally I can transcend these limitations and remove all these darknesses like Baba's taught, and I definitely think I absolutely can. But in my experience in the past, it's because this practice is so heaven inducing that, like, you just, you do all this meditation, and then you feel all this energy, all this sattvic energy, all this bliss, and then you take a week off, and you enter into like this kind of sort of heaven if you do, because all the
Well,
energy is it's like if you upgrade your nervous system and then you live a little bit more hedonistically, it's like very
mhm.
heaven like, right? So I don't know if that makes sense, but
Well, what I could say is, Ananda Marga currently is split. It's not a unified organization, it's actually split into branches who are kind of competing with each other, especially in India. There is people from one region in India, and then there's people from other region of India, and they kind of divided on this just geological basis. But if you read the Ananda Murti books, you just open neo-humanism book, which is very tiny, it's not a very big book. It's like, what, 50 pages, like 100 pages at most. And it's the foundation of social ideology of Ananda Marga. And it tells that you should see the whole manhood as a cosmic family. You should stay away from these sentiments, religious sentiments, human sentiment, and geological sentiment as well. And then you see that its own organization that was founded on the principles of Anandamurti, is not following the principles of Anandamurti.
yeah.
You see? That was very big clash for me. And especially when I see instances when, acharyas steal property from the organization. They put property on their name and then they run away, maybe with even some Didi. And it kind of makes me think, maybe these people don't even do meditation, but what I'm trying to say is that nothing is perfect, and you cannot expect everything to be perfect. And if you see somebody who's doing meditation, it doesn't guarantee that they actually do meditation, or it doesn't guarantee that they actually follow spirituality. Because being spiritual for me is not just about singing mantras. It's about actually following yama and niyama, following the social norms. Just being a decent person. And some of the people that I've met who do meditation, they are not decent people at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course I'm not perfect myself. I have a lot of flaws. But it just kind of blows my mind. And I
Human
actually got
weakness, yeah.
actually when I had this flaw, I'm a very honest person. I always speak my mind, and I talked about it with Dada. And I told him that, this organization, the leadership is not adequate. They make so many mistakes. They're not making right decisions. They only think about what leadership in India thinks, not about what we need here in the US to strive as Sananda Marga. There's many things that I shouldn't be talking about here that need to be done, and they're not being done because the leadership is just afraid of making decisions and all other type of things. And then, I went ahead and I did my meditation. And, in meditation, you can kind of get an answer to your question. So you can ask questions to God. And, I got an answer to that. Basically, I was told that you should live the way that you owe everybody everything, and nobody owns nothing to you.
Mm.
And I think this is actually a very powerful mentality. You should do your best and don't look at other people's.
Oh, the sound just got weird. I don't know if that is on my side or. Try speaking again. Huh. Yeah, I can't hear you so well anymore. Maybe you can try resetting your mic or like changing some setting.
Yeah,
or...
I can try.
I
I
can.
can try reconnecting.
Oh, it fixed. It fixed.
It fixed. It's probably just the internet.
Yeah. Okay.
But you got what I was saying?
Not the very end, but yeah, I got what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, I was told in my meditation that you should live the way that you own everything to everybody and nobody owns nothing to you. And I think this is the right approach in spirituality.
100%. Yeah. Like even if people are being mean to you, or there's some flaws, it's not about them. It's about us. It's about you. It's about how you are, not about. And the more that you think like that, the more you can elevate yourself and rise above those limitations that the outside world, that are in the outside world. And
Yeah. And this is the same thing that Bhagavad Gita is saying. And this is the spirit of second lesson of Ananda Marga, that you have to give up the fruits of your labor to God.
100%. Okay.
This is actually a very interesting question, and I would be curious to hear your answer for it.
For what?
About your realizations.
Oh, my realizations. Actually, it's funny because I felt like I was the most spiritual before ever formally becoming a part of the Ananda Marga, anything, like just on my own when I was listening to Dadasanananda. Those were some blissful years. Like there was probably a few months where I don't think there was many moments where I didn't not repeat my mantra. And I was just really enjoying it. I remember one time like in the desert, going out into the desert, and I was like we were at like a campfire with some friends, and we were taking like there was these almost kind of like trees that were like in the ground, like these little mini bushes, and you could kind of just like rip them out of the ground as like firewood and like throw them into the fire kind of. And so I kind of like walked away from like the main camp, and I was like in the wilderness, and the stars were great, and there was all this just wood kind of everywhere. And I had been repeating my mantra for a while, and I just began to like pick the wood. And I was just thinking, with like every time I like took this little shrub out of the ground that we would throw into the fire, and that I was getting like so much, like it was just like, it felt like infinite almost, like, and it was just like the bountifulness of, it's like the harvest almost. Like I think the Bible uses that word, the harvest, and it was like such a bountiful harvest I felt, or I don't know exactly how to explain, but like And that was a very spiritual moment under the stars. That was probably my most spiritual moment with mantras and with meditation alone. Um, but besides that, probably psychedelic experiences when I was younger. Yeah. Like I remember
Yeah.
I had some, when I was first doing psychedelic experiences, I was like seeing the pyramid of, I was seeing the Sphinx a lot for some reason.
Mm,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Who do you think made that? Who do you think made the Sphinx?
That is a good question. I mean, it's got to be. I remember. I don't know if you've ever seen these websites, The Law of One. Have you ever heard of this?
No.
It's really interesting. I think you should go check it out. There's this site called lawofone.info. It's a little bit. It's very crazy, actually. It's very out there, and it's kind of when I first started getting into spirituality. And I'm not going to claim any validity to it, one way or the other, but. Um, I was one of the things that they say is that these structures like the pyramids and the Sphinx and stuff were created by aliens, right? So this is like some very out there stuff.
Yeah.
And apparently, why the pyramids last so long and the Sphinx it's still there after all these times is because they're somehow created their like crystallized thought that somehow some this is really out there, but it's
I don't
fun.
know. It makes sense to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, that some alien races who intervened in humanity or something like that, that they created these structures, not by materiality, but by pure thought, and so that because they're made of this crystallized thought, that it somehow protects them in some fashion or some way, and so yeah, maybe aliens created these things. I don't know. Yeah.
You're right. I'm sure as hell it wasn't Egyptians.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I don't know how they could have done it. All right, so one final question: do you think that everybody is spiritual, or can be spiritual, or is meant for the spiritual path?
I think everybody sure is meant for spiritual path. In another marga, it's the definition of human being. If you can do meditation, then you are human being. So if you are in a human body, then of course you can do meditation. Of course, we have our karma and our samskaras, that sometimes we are not born into the right environment, or sometimes we meet wrong people for our path, who can kind of distract us from discovering spirituality, or who can, uh, or maybe you are just a child in Gaza and you're just trying to survive. Of course, this is very bad karma, and you're not gonna be thinking about, how to do meditation, you're just gonna be thinking about food, right? So, of course, I'm feeling very grateful that I am able to do meditation and I can dedicate a lot of hours every day for meditation. Of course, it's a blessing, but other than karma, I don't think anything can really stop you from doing it. As long as you're in a human body, you have the nervous system, you have your chakras, you're ready to go.
100%. All right. Any closing thoughts? Any comments you want to leave with everybody?
Well,
And we can also continue on talking a little bit after this, but just to close out the video.
probably what I would want to tell people, that even if they don't care about God, even if they don't care about any philosophy or any spiritual stuff, they should still do meditation, because meditation vastly improves your life, even in everyday kind of mundane tasks. Because what meditation does is it trains your mind to focus. And these days, we are so distracted. We live in a distracted world. Everybody is constantly on their phone. Everybody is constantly swiping reels. Nobody can really like study another day that modern day school kids cannot concentrate on one object for like 5 minutes. Like they literally cannot do math or anything. Teacher would be describing a subject in a class, and 10 minutes later they would forget what the teacher was talking about. So even if you have very simple desires, if you just want to make money, even if you just want to be successful in life, meditation, I mean, in financial life, yeah, I could say, meditation would still be very beneficial for you because you would be just ahead of your competition by just having trained, focused mind. And once you discover the benefits of meditation in this way, you will become curious. What else can it give me? How deep can I go? And once you go deeper and deeper and deeper, you discover the whole new realm of this universe. As I said before, you start to touch on infinite. And once you start touching on infinite, there is no going back.
Beautiful.
So no matter what your goal is, no matter what you want to do in your life, meditation is going to be very helpful for you. So of course everybody should be doing it, even if you think that we are crazy, even if you think that we are shizos, even if you are an atheist, you should still do it.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Okay.
I could say for myself, it did change my life for better. Of course, it made my life a little bit more difficult in some ways. Like I became vegetarian, and as a vegetarian, it becomes kind of hard to be eaten out. But on the other way, you start learning so much about cooking and about.
Oh, your mic cut off. I still can't hear you.
I don't know.
Oh, you're back. Back.
Okay. Well, what I was saying is, it's like this vegetarianism. Remember when you still was eating meat, you would never pay attention to like tofu products, right? You would never get anything other than chicken tikka masala at the Indian restaurant or whatever. But now you have so many new options. You actually learn how to cook nicely. In Eastern Europe, we have this very famous soup that's called borscht. And borscht with meat would always take like hours to cook. Sometimes I would be so lazy. I wouldn't cook it just because I would be lazy, because I knew that it would take 3 hours. But now, since I don't have to boil bones to do the broth, it only takes half an hour to cook, and I can enjoy it whenever I want, even if I don't have so much time.
Right.
So in one way, it makes your life more difficult, but it makes your life more interesting and more fulfilling.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for coming on, Aravinda. That was a really good discussion.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll do this again. I think hopefully I'm planning on doing maybe some group discussions. Maybe we could get some datas in here or whatever else. Really fun. And yeah, for all listeners out there, as always, Ad Astra.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.